In the ancient world, the pursuit of trade and commerce was a fundamental force, fueling the development of cities, states, and empires. As early as 3000 BCE, humans began to form complex networks of exchange that would shape economies and cultures. From the earliest marketplaces in Mesopotamia to the expansive trade routes of the Roman Empire, commerce was a catalyst for innovation, cross-cultural exchange, and economic prosperity. This story unravels the journey of commerce in antiquity, revealing how ancient civilizations laid the groundwork for modern economic systems. Chapter 1. Mesopotamia. The birthplace of trade commerce has its earliest roots in the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia. By 3000 BCE, the Sumerians of Mesopotamia, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, had developed a sophisticated economy supported by agriculture and trade. The city-states of Sumer, including Ur, Uruk, and Eridu, exchanged goods like grain, livestock, and textiles. Bartering was the initial form of exchange, and the Sumerians developed early economic systems to manage trade. Clay tablets bearing cuneiform inscriptions recorded transactions, establishing the world's first bookkeeping systems. Temples and palaces functioned as economic hubs, where surplus goods were stored, traded, and taxed. Trade networks extended into modern-day Iran and Turkey, importing precious metals, stones, and luxury items. One of the most fascinating artifacts of this period is the Code of Hammurabi, circa 1754 BCE, which laid out detailed laws governing trade, contracts, and wages, underscoring the importance of commerce in daily life. Through these codes, the Mesopotamians established a formal economic system, paving the way for structured trade practices and economic stability. Chapter 2. Egypt, the economy of the Nile. As the Mesopotamians thrived, Egypt was building an economy along the banks of the Nile. Ancient Egypt, known for its monumental architecture and complex society, developed a powerful economy driven by agriculture, mining, and trade. The Nile served as a natural highway for trade, enabling Egyptians to transport goods like grain, flax, and papyrus. The Nile also connected Egypt to neighboring civilizations. Egyptian merchants traded with the Nubians to the south, importing gold, ivory, and exotic animals. The Egyptians were known to journey to the land of Punt, a fabled source of incense, myrrh, and precious woods. Egyptian society had a complex system of taxation, and labor was often a form of currency. Farmers contributed part of their harvests as taxes, which the state used to support monumental building projects, religious ceremonies, and the army. The concept of Mayat, or cosmic order, underpinned the economy, with Egyptians believing that fair trade was essential to maintain harmony. Chapter 3. The Indus Valley, a model of urban trade. To the east, the Indus Valley civilization, circa 3300 to 1300 BCE, emerged as one of the most sophisticated societies of its time. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, the major cities of this civilization, were bustling centers of commerce and craftsmanship. The Indus Valley people traded a variety of goods, including beads, pottery, textiles, and semi-precious stones like lapis lazuli and carnelian. The Indus Valley was connected by trade with Mesopotamia, and evidence of goods from the Indus has been found in cities like Ur. This civilization used standardized weights and measures, indicating an advanced understanding of economic regulation. Archaeological discoveries of inscribed seals suggest that merchants in the Indus Valley used these as marks of ownership or quality. These seals, found as far as Mesopotamia, reflect a network of trade and communication between these early civilizations. One unique aspect of the Indus Valley economy was its organization. There is little evidence of social stratification or extreme wealth disparity. This suggests a more collective approach to commerce, where resources were shared and trade served the needs of the community as a whole. Chapter 4. Phoenicia, Masters of Maritime Trade. The Phoenicians, a seafaring civilization from the Levant, became famous for their vast trading networks around 1500 BCE. Known for their skills in shipbuilding and navigation, the Phoenicians established trade routes that spanned the Mediterranean Sea, from North Africa to the coast of Spain. Major Phoenician cities such as Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos served as centers of commerce, where traders exchanged luxury goods like purple dye, glass, and wine. Phoenician purple dye, made from murex shells, became highly prized and was a symbol of royalty across the Mediterranean. They also became renowned for their glass-making techniques, and Phoenician glassware was widely traded. The Phoenicians' greatest innovation, however, was their alphabet, a simplified script that spread across the Mediterranean, influencing Greek and Latin writing systems. This development revolutionized record-keeping and commerce, making trade accessible and efficient. The Phoenicians also founded colonies, most notably Carthage, which grew into a powerful city-state that dominated Mediterranean trade for centuries. Through their colonies, the Phoenicians facilitated economic integration in the region, laying the foundation for trans-Mediterranean commerce. Chapter 5. The Silk Road. East meets West. The Silk Road, which emerged around the 2nd century BCE, was one of the most iconic trade networks in history. This web of overland and maritime routes linked China to the Middle East, India, and eventually the Roman Empire. While silk was the primary commodity exported from China, the Silk Road facilitated the exchange of spices, ceramics, precious stones, and ideas. Under the Han Dynasty, China sought to extend its influence westward, establishing diplomatic and trade connections that helped open the Silk Road. This route allowed Chinese silk to reach Roman markets, where it was considered a luxury item. In exchange, China imported gold, silver, and horses from the West. The Silk Road wasn't just a trade route for goods, it was also a conduit for culture and ideas. Buddhism traveled from India to China, and technology, such as papermaking, spread from China to the West. The Silk Road's influence on commerce was immense, creating economic interdependence between diverse empires and setting the stage for early globalization. Chapter 6. Greece and Rome, the birth of classical economics. In the Mediterranean, Greek city-states like Athens and Corinth became centers of trade and commerce. The Greeks established colonies throughout the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, spreading their influence and creating a network of interconnected economies. Greek merchants traded wine, olive oil, and pottery, which were highly valued across the region. Greek economies were among the first to experiment with coinage, using coins as standardized currency to facilitate trade and end bartering practices. The rise of Rome brought an era of unprecedented economic growth and stability known as the Pax Romana. Roman roads connected the vast territories of the empire, enabling the movement of goods, people, and ideas. The Romans imported silks from China, spices from India, and amber from northern Europe. Rome's vast network of trade routes extended from the British Isles to North Africa, establishing a level of economic connectivity rarely seen before. Roman currency became the standard across much of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, making trade more predictable and efficient. The Roman Empire's economy was supported by a system of taxation, which funded infrastructure, the military, and public services. Roman law also formalized commercial practices, providing contracts, property rights, and other legal frameworks that facilitated business. This legal structure set a precedent for economic regulation that would influence Western economies for centuries. Chapter 7. The Kingdoms of Africa: Gold, Salt, and Trans-Saharan Trade. In West Africa, the rise of the Ghana and Mali empires in the 8th and 13th centuries CE brought significant wealth through trade. These kingdoms controlled the gold-salt trade, one of the most lucrative trade networks of the time. Salt, essential for food preservation, was mined in the Sahara and traded southward in exchange for gold, which was abundant in regions like Bambouk and Wangara. Camel caravans, capable of crossing the harsh Sahara, transported salt, cloth, and copper. The city of Timbuktu in Mali grew into a hub of commerce, scholarship, and culture. With the spread of Islam, North African merchants introduced new systems of finance, including loans and partnerships, which facilitated trade across the Sahara. The wealth generated by this trade enabled African empires to flourish and funded the construction of mosques, universities, and libraries, turning cities like Timbuktu into intellectual and cultural centers. This trans-Saharan trade network connected sub-Saharan Africa to the broader Islamic world, integrating African economies into global commerce. Chapter 8: India and the Spice Trade. The Indian subcontinent was a hub of trade long before European explorers reached its shores. Indian merchants traded spices, textiles, and precious stones across the Indian Ocean, establishing connections with Arabia, Southeast Asia, and East Africa. Ports like Calicut and Muziris flourished as commercial centers where merchants from distant lands exchanged goods. Indian spices, especially pepper, cloves, and cinnamon, were highly prized across the world, used for culinary, medicinal, and religious purposes. The spice trade was so lucrative that it sparked voyages of exploration centuries later, ultimately leading to the Age of Discovery.